Hello, my name is John Reynolds. Welcome to Extraordinary Life Stories. On this episode, I'm talking with Lawrence Dallaglio. Lawrence is a legendary figure in the world of rugby, captained England to numerous victories and earning 85 caps. He literally has been a hero of mine personally, playing a pivotal role in the England team's 2003 Rugby World Cup triumph. Known for his leadership, resilience and fierce determination on the field, Lawrence became one of the sport's most respected players. Off the field, Lawrence has dedicated himself to charity work, founding the Dallaglio RugbyWorks Foundation, which helps disadvantaged young people. I'm very much looking forward to this conversation, so let's get into it. Lawrence, thank you so much for joining me.
Pleasure, it's good to be here, very excited.
I have been really looking forward to this.
Thank you.
Tell me, who is Lawrence Dallaglio?
I don't know, he's 52 years old, half Italian, half Irish, which makes me a dangerous Englishman, I guess. Born into a working class family. Mum and dad had a newsagents in East End of London. Very quickly we moved over to a different part of town, and yeah, I mean, listen, I've had the most incredible, I feel like very privileged and honoured to have had the most incredible life.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, up to the age of about 52, which is what I am now. You know, grew up in a house with a lot of, well, I was given two things actually: unconditional love, which is a hard thing, easy thing to say as a parent, it's a very hard thing to actually do. When I say unconditional, I mean when the police used to turn up, my mum went, "Not my Lawrence, you must have the wrong house," definitely. And also given a belief system that you could go out and conquer the world, and never meant to play rugby, and was never a rugby player. I know people look at you and think, "Oh, you're born to play rugby." Absolutely no way. I loved sport growing up, as a lot of people do. Rugby came to me very late. I've experienced lots of highs, lots of lows. You know, personal tragedy, which probably shaped my life and shaped my career.
Is that to do with your sister?
Yeah, I lost my sister when I was 16. She was 19 on the Marchioness riverboat disaster. I was invited, didn't go. She went, never came back.
Were you guys close?
Very close. I mean, we're an Italian-Irish family. I mean, you know, the word family is probably, you know, at the forefront of that. And I got to be honest with you, it really hit me hard, as it would do anyone of that age. So I had a good couple of years where I really struggled mentally, questioned the reason for life, etc., and was getting myself into quite a bit of trouble. And in the end, I saw my parents, you know, separating at the seam. My mum was plunged into grief, fighting for justice. My dad had a heart attack, etc., etc. And I ended up playing. I thought, right, I need to do something to change the course of my life, and
needed a purpose.
A purpose.
Yeah.
Well, I needed a family. I needed I just needed someone to put their arms around me, really. And so, for some reason, I had this spark in my head, and I thought, right, I'll join a rugby club. So I opened the newspaper. And
were you playing rugby at this point?
No. I mean, I had played it, don't get me wrong, and I had played football and all sorts of other sports, but I wasn't driven by it or defined by it. So I opened up the newspaper and I thought, and Wasps were the club, happened to be top of the table, and I thought, right, I'll go there. They were in London. And when I walked in there, it was a bit of an odd experience, really, because it looked like a working man's club, didn't look like a rugby club that was top of the English league. And anyway, no one asked me any questions, no one was looking, there was no stereotype. I was just given open arms, welcomed in, and which
is just what you were looking for, actually.
Yeah, it was, and I started playing. And bear in mind, rugby wasn't a professional career. It was a hobby. You know, you used to play on a Tuesday and a Thursday night, used to train, and then play on a Saturday. Everyone had a job, everyone had a career and a purpose. So I wasn't going there for any kind of financial reward or gain. And what I felt was quite special about Wasps and rugby in particular was the fact that it's quite inclusive, really. There was no, you know, it celebrates difference. And I was a bit different, there's no doubt about that. But what they did is they put their arms around me, and I just felt a sense of belonging. So when I talk about my rugby career, that was my why, really, was the death of my sister, which I wouldn't want to be my why, but it gave me a reason for wanting to succeed. And I was driven by a much more powerful purpose than just wanting to play rugby and do quite well.
It's external to yourself,
yeah,
right?
And also my mum and dad started to come and watch me play. They started to rebuild their own relationship and started to smile again, really, which was good. And my mum was never short of a word or two, so she would, politely encourage myself and the opposition as well. So, I mean, she was a West Ham fan, so she was, yeah.
I love that though, because that brings your sister along with you for the whole journey.
Yeah.
Brings your parents together, and then you form a tribe, quite literally.
Yeah.
You know, a group of players that sort of ultimately become friends. Because loneliness could have been quite isolated, dealing with the emotions of grief, 16 years old and moving forward. When did you start to feel that you were a natural leader? Because that's the Lawrence that obviously I grew up watching on the rugby pitch, the sort of bellowing, leading by example. You found a passion and a purpose there. When did that sort of start coming through in you?
I don't know. I suppose whether it was a confidence or a belief. I was never short of a word or two. Sometimes, I need to know when to shut up as well, though, to be honest. But
we're all learning that. Right?
I was given, responsibility quite early from when I walked into Wasps. The game started to develop and evolve, and I was sort of highlighted as someone who might have the confidence and the sort of belief to go out and try and speak to people. I mean, I think everyone's got that within them. Some people may be just a little bit more wary of allowing it to develop. And so I was made captain of the club from a very early age. But I was always conscious that when you are leading or speaking to people, especially men, it's about finding an emotional connection. It's certainly in a sporting context. I mean, I'm in a room with a load of men who are, some of which are a lot more experienced than I am, a lot older than I am. I'm not going to make them better rugby players necessarily, but it doesn't really matter. The rugby is irrelevant, to be honest with you. It's about I was always about the head and the heart, finding the right emotional connection with people, so that you can, you can connect together on a slightly different level.
So that's body language, that's empathy.
Everything really. I mean, I think, one of the lessons I've learned in my career and in my life is the most important thing about winning is believing you can win. If you don't believe you can win,
you've probably lost already, right?
It's very hard, because especially when the team next door are better than you, because they can be better sometimes on paper. So the margins in sport, everyone talks about our margins are really small. They are. So now believing doesn't mean that you suddenly get this kind of injection of overconfidence and arrogance. Okay, what it does mean is that and sometimes on a Monday you may not believe you can win, but by Saturday there's no way you can't win, you can't lose.
So you're constantly working towards that.
Yeah, and I think
a habit.
So I think it's about creating this narrative that allows you to have belief, because belief is, believe it or not, becomes infectious as well. And if you believe it, then someone else believes it. If you doubt yourself, or if someone next to you doubts yourself, then you start to go, maybe I doubt myself too. So I think it is important to understand that whether you believe it or not, the body language is quite important in sport.
Could you bottle that or articulate? Because you mentioned your mum just instilled that into you.
Yeah.
And then you took that forward, and then you instilled that into your teammates. You instilled that into probably people in everyday life.
Yeah.
If someone was watching or listening to this now and was like, I want to believe in myself, where do I start? What do I do? What advice would you give?
I think it's okay to be vulnerable as well. That's the thing. I mean, in fact, you have to almost allow people to see your vulnerability in order for them to believe as well.
Vulnerability, particularly in men, is actually a real strength.
Yeah, right? It is. And I would pick a different narrative every week, and invariably include myself in that, because I'm as vulnerable as anyone, really.
Have you watched that transition though? Because two guys having a chat now, it's becoming normal.
Yeah.
You're 52, I'm 47. Rewind 20 years, it wasn't cool. It wasn't the norm in my group.
Oh, no.
When did you start to see that transition? When did you get comfortable with it?
Well, it's not just a man thing, although it's probably highlighted a bit more in men because, I don't know. But I mean, if I think back to my own childhood, there's probably things I would never have said or done in front of my parents that now my own children, do quite naturally. I mean, I wouldn't bring anyone home. I wouldn't do anything necessarily out of routine because you just didn't want your parents to know. Now you almost encourage your generation of children to listen, if you've got any problems or any issues, or you want to do something, or you want to come home and do it. This is a safe space. This is an environment where you can be safe. It never used to be that way. So I think it's just about, some people are more vocal than others. Okay, that doesn't make them insecure. It doesn't make them any more or less vulnerable. Some people like talking, some people don't. And I think it's just being, keeping an eye on people. I think when you play sport with people, it opens up a different type of relationship, because when you go to work with people, you only see them when they're at work, and then they go home and they only share with you what they want to share with you when they come back to work. And that's okay, but when you actually play sport with someone, especially a sport like rugby, which is requires a lot of emotion and requires a lot of energy and requires a much deeper and much more intense relationship than maybe the work environment, you get to find out everything about people, because the person that arrives at the training ground and goes out on the field is the person that exists at home as well, and you get to see them.
Yeah.
Maybe not as openly as perhaps other people would see it, but Yeah. And also there is a need to have real honesty with each other, which maybe doesn't exist in a normal working environment.
No, there's nowhere to hide as well, right?
No,
if you're especially at the level, you played at the highest level.
Yeah.
Won the 2003 World Cup, 80-something caps for England. There is nowhere to hide at that level, right? Because you're going to call people out, and you're all in that.
And also, when there was a moment in my career when things changed a little bit, when it's no longer just a hobby, okay, where a lack of standards might be acceptable. When it becomes your job and your chosen career and your profession, then things change, because not that we weren't serious about winning before, but ultimately your reputation and your career is assessed by results. We're all in the results business in sport. You either win or you lose. There's none. We don't do the draw thing very often. So there's two emotions: agony or ecstasy, and you win as a team and you lose as a team. But ultimately, I used to have a sort of widely held theory that if you don't win at least 70% of the time, then you're in the wrong job, because the sacrifice required to be a sportsman or a sportswoman at the highest level is brutal. I mean, it's you give up everything, and everyone else gives up everything to allow you the platform to perform. Yeah. It's such a selfish career, which is probably just as well, and it's quite short-lived, because it's all about you. Everyone and people have to share that kind of emotional roller coaster of success with you. They're with you. They're with you on the highs. They're with you on the lows. When you've broken your leg, when you can't walk down the stairs, everything is geared to you. They can't go on holiday because I've got to be at this game or that game. So it's quite a selfish career, and therefore it's only worth all of the sacrifice if you're successful enough. Now we can't win every game. We'd love to, but you can certainly have that. And I used to say to guys, look, if you don't want to. If you don't want to take this seriously, or you're not interested in being honest, then go and find another job. Yeah. Because we're all here in the results business, and if we don't get results,
you've got to be joined up, though, right?
We have to be. And listen, I know that this sounds very dramatic, and I don't mean it to, but it's the only analogy I can sort of relate to, is that if we're in the armed forces and we go to war, right? If you don't do your job, then I have to explain to your mum and dad when I get home why you haven't come back on the helicopter, and I have to explain that it might be my fault or someone else's fault. Yeah. Now in rugby, no one loses their life, thankfully, but you have to approach it in the same way. There has to be that same level of respect and mentality, because
and commitment.
Because we're not. I hope that most people still feel this way. Maybe if you're rewarded financially, it's okay to lose. I don't know. I think the simple view is that I never played rugby to earn money. Otherwise, I'd have chosen a very different career.
Yeah, I get that.
And therefore, the money is not the motivating factor. Whether we win or lose, it's not how much you're paid. It's serial winners detest losing.
Yeah, in your sort of DNA, it's the whole ethos to want to be a good sportsman. It's actually go hand in hand with business.
And maybe I was a little bit over the top. I felt embarrassed by losing. I wouldn't speak to people for 2 or 3 days. I'd struggle I'd be grumpy, but not in an aggressive way. I'd just be grumpy because it's not right.
But what? I was a fan watching. Yeah. You could see that. Yeah. You could see that, and actually, that's where, dare I say, I don't want to sort of delve into the world of maybe sort of the Premiership and where a team loses, and you just see them go off the field and you think they're just getting paid much money. Whereas when you would walk off the field if you lost,
I do think they care. I do think they care. But also I know that sport, I'm a sports fan myself, right? So I know that if my team wins or loses in any sport, I'm impacted by that as well, and it affects my, it can. That's why when people say sport has the ability to inspire, it does, because it can define your week. You either start the week in a good mood or not.
It's amazing how many people are on the following the sport that affects their own week, right? Someone comes in on a Monday and their team's lost, the England national team loses, and it's a sort of everyone's carrying that with them. They haven't even played the game, but they're passionate about it. So there's a huge...
And also there has to be that honesty and that accountability. So I had no problem as a captain coming out afterwards and just saying, look, I'd just like to apologise to the nation for that performance, because I'm feeling it as much as you are. There's one or two things.
I remember you doing that.
There's one or two things that we need to put right, and trust me, we will put it right.
Yeah.
Now, what that does is that all your teammates are listening to that, thinking, "Oh dear, Jesus, we better get our bucker ideas up." It doesn't need to be said publicly, but I think the fan at home will sit there and go, "Okay," because we all make mistakes, and we all, we can't win every game. That's the thing. So. Yeah,
it's amazing how much you've watched the game change from walking into Wasps when it was like a kind of gentleman's club to the professionalism in sport now. Yeah. But ultimately to achieve success, to try and win. Sitting here now, how would you define success?
Well, it depends what you're referring to, really. I mean, in terms of results, I don't know.
Well, it's a purpose thing for you. So at any one time in your life, you were literally looking to train to win a World Cup, to win a Premiership. Yeah. So I guess that would have been, that version of Lawrence's answer to success. Yeah. I'm talking about that perspective, maturity sitting here now, what really matters to you, what you're trying to achieve, what your North Star is, and how close you are to...
I think certainly when I was playing, it was about trying to make myself and my teams as successful as possible, and to have fun as well, which we hopefully manage. The two sort of go hand in hand. I don't know many people who lose and smile. So you have to be winning, otherwise you're not smiling very much, are you? Which is not good, because I'm a natural smiler. But once so I don't know, do you measure success by the number of trophies you win? Do you measure it by the milestones you achieve, both individually and collectively? I suppose you do, to a degree. Yeah. And then when you move on in life, you're kind of you change your goals, don't you? Change your ambitions, you change your targets. Purpose changes. When I retired, like many sportsmen, I wasn't quite sure about my direction of travel, primarily because I've been so focused on what I've been doing.
I wanted to ask you that because that's a key thing. You always knew your playing days were numbered, right? So there's the commitment you showed, and you're demonstrating it right now. I can see you go back to that where it was all in. And there are a number of people that come out of sport and they've already planned what they're going to do from an entrepreneurial point of view, or they've got a corporate role with a bank, that sort of relationship side of things. It did feel like you were so all in that coming out, then you've got to sort of have a think again about what direction you're going. And one of the things you have done is RugbyWorks. And just listening to you, going back to the young Lawrence getting into trouble, mum opening the door and nothing to do with my son sort of thing. Is there and I'd like you to tell me what RugbyWorks is doing, and is there a bit of a why behind it to try and help people, because you wanted to go
possibly.
give back?
I certainly when I got to the end, rugby was never my vocation.
No.
Okay, so I never grew up thinking one day I'm going to be a rugby player and I'm going to play for England. I think if you asked Johnny Wilkinson the same question, he would tell you that aged 8 that he knew he was going to play rugby
manifesting it, right?
For England, right? I was definitely not of that era. So I had a job. I played amateur rugby. So I turned up as a hobby. I've given you the reasons why. It was my driver. So I also played 13 years of professional rugby as well. So I gave up my job to become a professional rugby player. A lot of my mates went, "Oh, no, I'm not as good as you. That's not for me. I'm going to carry on being a lawyer or a banker or a broker or a builder, whatever they do." So I then played 13 years of professional rugby. So I always knew, as I was getting towards the end of my professional career, when was the right time to retire, because you don't want someone to tell you it's time to retire. And I always had one eye on going back to work, and I was quite excited about going back to work, because the thing about sport at the highest level is that it's about doing the same things over and over again and repeating behaviours. And you win, then you win again, then you win the trophy again and again and again and again. and it can get a little bit repetitive and a bit monotonous. So I think at the end of my career, I thought, right, I'm done now. I actually want to change my focus and change my targets. And so I was quite happy to retire because I wasn't being told by anyone else it was time to go.
It was on your terms.
It was on my terms. And in fact, you know, my last game of rugby was a Premiership final, and I got standing ovation in front of 85,000 people, and we won the trophy. So, you know, had we not, I probably would have had to extend my contract for one more year and try again. But
so it was the right time.
You know, I got to write my own script in many ways and leave on my own terms. I also thought that when I was starting to be substituted after 50 minutes, that possibly it was my time to go anyway. So it was a good feeling. I think a lot of people finished, or their sports career is either ended early by injury, or they're unable to sort of dictate terms. So therefore there's always a yearning and always something left to achieve. I didn't go into coaching, not because I don't think I could have coached the game, but I don't think, I thought I'd given so much to the sport in terms of my own career. I didn't really have much left to give. I was all in, and I just thought I need to reflect and sit back first. If I start coaching, I know that I would become obsessed with winning again, and I don't think the obsession with winning is always good.
No, you've got to be passionate about it.
Well, it creates a person that is kind of quite selfish and kind of ruthless and introvert and whatever, and you just you know, you're a psychopath, really. I mean,
but your charity works the opposite. You are literally changing people's lives.
Well, just to talk about the charity, listen, I was given, as I said to you at the beginning of the conversation, unconditional love and a belief system, and anything and everything was possible the minute you walked out the door. Because we grew up in the East End of London, and then I grew up in West London, I was always conscious that there's different sides to life. You know, you can be heads or tails. You know, you can be below the breadline or above the breadline. You know, you can be whatever, and so it was important for me as I went out through my rugby career. I was always approached to be the face of a lot of campaigns for charity, and I was very happy to do that. But I realised that I was becoming quite a good pot filler for other charities, and I raised millions of pounds, as many sports people do, and that's great. But as I got towards the end of my rugby career, I thought, you know what, I really like what I'm doing, but why don't I do it for something that I'm really passionate about?
Perfect.
And I knew that sport was my why, and then I started, like you would do when you set up any business. I started to investigate the charity space, and I knew it was using rugby as a way of helping, because rugby changed my life. I walked into a rugby club at a time when I was at my lowest, and it completely changed my life. I didn't then think that I would play rugby for England or I would get paid to play. So I started to work around school. I knew I wanted to work with young kids. Then I started to look at schools, and then this area around disadvantage. And I realised that there was very few organisations working with disadvantaged kids in this kind of space of exclusion, and that made me even more curious. Anyway, it's turned out that I set up a charity that exclusively, it didn't happen overnight. It took me a while to recognise my sweet spot and where I wanted to operate. But the niche that I work in is with young people that are permanently excluded from school. So I set up RugbyWorks, and it's a rugby-based programme that goes into schools, but AP schools, alternative provision, so not mainstream education. And we work with kids who have been expelled from school. It's a rugby-based programme that becomes one-on-one mentoring with these young kids, and then we offer them employability opportunities with the specific target of getting them into full-time employment and education. I was horrified, if I'm honest, at how broken the system is, how no one is really, once you're excluded from school, no one really cares about what happens afterwards. And my genuine belief is every young person deserves an education. And just because you're excluded from school, it doesn't mean you should be excluded from society. And currently, I work with 14 to 18-year-old boys and girls all year round on a 3-year programme that gets them into full-time employment and education. Currently, there's 240 young people excluded every week from mainstream education. That's a big and very worrying number. Currently, 65% of everyone in the prison population has been expelled from school, and 66% of all prisoners reoffend. So we are living in this virtuous circle. Our interventions, and we're not the only programme, there are other similar programmes that maybe use boxing or use football or use the arts as a way of intervening. 50% of the people that go through our program, in fact, we have an 85% success rate of getting young people into full-time employment. So currently, 65% no intervention, go to prison. With an intervention like ours, 85% go on and have full-time employment. And the reason that I think young people are excluded, there's a stereotype, oh, they deserve to be expelled or this, that and the other. No, like you and I, very fortunately, are probably born into quite nice homes. Doesn't mean we're born into money, because my parents didn't have any money. We used to sell, we had a sweet shop when we were growing up. But we were born into an environment where we had love and care and attention, and we were we were given consistency in terms of our behaviours. I would say nearly all of the young people we work with are born into chaos, and therefore, their chances of any success in life are blighted from the start. And I always say to people when they ask me this question, I said, if you were 14 or 15 and you found yourself living at home in an environment that was chaotic, whether it's drug abuse, violent abuse, no parents, bad parenting, whatever, would you want someone to come and help you? And the answer predominantly is yes, of course you would. So therefore, this is what we do as a charity. We signpost people, and it's really powerful. I could have easily set up a charity that plays rugby with kids, and I give them all a rugby ball, and I could have worked with thousands of kids, right? But what am I trying to achieve? What this charity does, and I've deliberately chosen, is to work with a small group, but actually have a transformational impact on their lives.
One of the most powerful things I think you said there is that it's the thing you're most proud of, and you've won a World Cup, won the 2003 World Cup, and yet that just by positively affecting one person's life through this, I can tell the fulfilment, the satisfaction,
of course.
let alone the actual impact that has on that person's life. Which is funny because throughout this conversation, and I've been lucky enough to meet you outside of here before at a memorable kind of lunch that we had, you've got brilliant humour, and it feels like that's a key part of how you maybe have got through everything you've done, from grief at 16 to the camaraderie with it, overcoming losing and being beaten, which must have driven you mad, to then making humour out of it. Has that always been a constant with you?
Yeah, well, I think you take 3 or 4 steps forward in life, and then you have a little setback or a little bump in the road. I mean, I had an enormous bump in the road that happened to me at 16, right? So it changed my life, forever. But I think we all learn that life's tough, right? No matter who you are, where you're born. You could be born into a chaotic home, or you could be born into, with a silver spoon in your mouth. It's still pretty tough life, and it's about, I think what playing sport does is it teaches you a bit more resilience, around, people only see, and in this world of social media and the various platforms, people only often see the good, the good bits, don't they, really? I call it mylifesbetterthanyours.com, because everyone's competing to show you how wonderful their life is.
Insta versus reality.
I mean, we used to write a diary, dear diary, but in your diary you wrote maybe some dark things that were happening in your life and some difficulties that were happening, But we don't see many people post about those. They only want to talk about themselves in a really glowing way, and we all know that that's not the way it works. And playing sport or in life, there's always setbacks along the way. People never used to see the horrific injuries you had. The challenges you had, loss of form, loss of self-esteem, loss of confidence, which all of us go through at various times.
Lawrence, you're a busy man. You made time to come and see me today, and I really look forward to it. Did you enjoy it?
Yes, it's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Lawrence.
Thanks for having us.